Caleb Donovan, a widowed single father working as a hotel maintenance technician, intervenes when arrogant billionaire investor Preston Blake publicly grabs and harasses CEO Madeline Harper during a charity gala, calmly insisting that her refusal be respected despite risking his job. While escorting Madeline toward his daughter Ellie's science showcase, Preston retaliates by framing Caleb for sabotaging the hotel's security system, hoping to disgrace him and manipulate the incident into seizing temporary control of Harper Meridian Group. Caleb's knowledge of building safety systems combined with Ellie's award-winning cardboard hotel model, highlighting a forgotten camera blind spot, exposes the real sabotage. Security footage access logs relay data, and a reflected image prove Preston deliberately tampered with the system and attempted to frame Caleb. Preston is stripped of his authority and removed pending investigation, while Madeline regains full control of her company. Deeply moved by Caleb's integrity and devotion to his daughter Madeline, offers him a leadership role overseeing safety design, which he accepts only after securing flexible hours to prioritize Ellie. As they spend more time together, Madeline discovers genuine respect and love built on honesty rather than wealth or status, while Caleb and Ellie find a future where kindness, dignity, and quiet courage triumph over manipulation and greed. Let go of her hand. The words were not loud, but they cut through the grand Ellison ballroom sharper than the silver forks resting beside untouched dinner plates. Every conversation stopped. Every glass paused halfway to someone's mouth. Under 3 crystal chandeliers with 400 donors, investors, and society photographers watching, Preston Blake still had his fingers wrapped around Madeline Harper's wrist, as if her refusal were only a delay, not a decision. Madeline stood perfectly still in her midnight blue gown, her face calm in the way storms look calm from far away. She was 35, the chief executive officer of Harper Meridian Group, owner of buildings that touched the clouds in Chicago, Dallas, Denver, and New York. Men had chased her since the first magazine called her America's most eligible businesswoman. Some chased her money. Some chased her name. Some chased the idea of being seen beside her. Preston had chased all 3, and tonight he had stopped pretending it was romance. "Madeline," he said through a smile made for cameras, "do not embarrass yourself. Everyone knows you came alone." His thumb tightened slightly over her bracelet. "You are tired. I am offering you stability." A few people nearby looked away because wealth often makes cowardice look like manners. Madeline pulled once gently at first. Preston let go. He leaned closer. "Stop pretending you have better options." That was when the man from the edge of the stage stepped forward. He wore a gray maintenance shirt with a faded name patch, dark work pants dusted at the knees, and a tool belt hanging low against one hip. In one hand he still held a small flashlight, in the other a burned-out fuse. He looked like someone who belonged behind walls under stairwells in boiler rooms, anywhere but between a billionaire investor and the woman he believed he could claim. His name was Caleb Donovan, though almost no one in that room knew it. To them, he was just the man who fixed the lights. To his little girl upstairs, waiting beside a cardboard model of the same hotel, he was everything. Preston turned, slowly annoyed before he was even offended. "Excuse me." Caleb stopped 6 feet away, close enough to be heard, far enough to show he was not looking for a fight. His voice stayed low, steady, almost gentle. "She asked you to let go." A ripple moved through the ballroom. Someone gave a nervous laugh. Someone else whispered, "Is that maintenance?" Madeline looked at Caleb for the first time, really looked at him. There was no hunger in his eyes, no calculation. No hope that this moment might become a headline, a favor, a promotion, or a door into her world. There was only quiet dignity, the kind most powerful men tried to imitate and never could. Preston released her wrist, but only to straighten his jacket. "Do you know who I am?" Caleb's face did not change. "I know what I saw." "You saw a private conversation." "No." Caleb said, "I saw a woman say no." The chandeliers hummed above them. Somewhere near the stage, the microphone gave a soft crackle. Madeline felt the warmth of Preston's fingers fade from her skin, but something else remained, something unfamiliar and almost painful. Relief. Preston laughed, but it came out thin. "You are throwing away your job over a woman who would not remember your name tomorrow." Caleb glanced at his watch, then toward the elevators. "Sir, my daughter is presenting her science project in 12 minutes. I would rather not waste any more of them." That was the first moment the room went quiet for the right reason, not because of money, not because of fear, because a poor single dad in a faded uniform had defended the richest woman in the room and somehow looked like the only man there who understood respect. Preston's smile returned slowly, but now it had lost its polish. It was no longer the smile of a charming donor under chandelier light. It was the smile of a man trying to recover power before anyone noticed he had dropped it. He looked Caleb up and down from the faded name patch to the scuffed work boots and gave a soft laugh meant to invite the room back onto his side. "Maintenance staff," he said almost kindly, which made it uglier. "That explains the confidence. People who do not understand rooms like this often mistake silence for permission to speak." Caleb did not lower his eyes. He did not step closer. He simply placed the burned-out fuse into the small pouch on his tool belt as if Preston's insult were one more piece of damaged equipment that did not need emotion to be handled. "I understand enough," Caleb said. "A woman asked to be left alone." Preston's jaw tightened. A woman he turned toward Madeline with a theatrical gesture. "This is Madeline Harper. She is not some stranger at a bus stop. She is a public figure, a business leader, a woman whose decisions affect billions of dollars. Men like me protect women like her from men like you." A few nervous chuckles rose and died quickly. Madeline felt them land like dust on polished marble. For years that had been the language surrounding her. Protect, guide, advise, secure, stabilize. Always spoken by men who wanted to place a hand on the steering wheel of her life and call it concern. Caleb looked at her then just once, not long enough to presume anything. "Ma'am," he said, "do you want me to leave?" The question was so simple that it disarmed her. Not "should I stay?" Not "do you need me?" Not "will you remember this?" Just a choice handed back to her quietly in a room where everyone else had been trying to take one away. Madeline swallowed, her voice calm but thinner than before. "No." Preston blinked. Caleb nodded once. "Then I will stay until you say otherwise." The ballroom shifted again. A woman near the dessert table lowered her phone. An older man from the City Arts Board stopped pretending to read the program. Somewhere behind them, a waiter stood frozen with a silver tray in both hands. Preston stepped nearer, not to Caleb, but to the space between them, as if wealth itself gave him a wider shadow. "Listen carefully," he said. "By tomorrow morning you will not have a job in this hotel. By lunch you will not have a reference. By dinner you will wish you had stayed in the basement where men like you belong." Caleb heard every word. So did Madeline. So did the room. And still Caleb's face remained steady, touched by something older than pride and stronger than anger. "I have been poor before," he said. "I have been unemployed before. I have been tired before. None of those taught me to be cruel." The words fell softly, but they reached the corners of the ballroom. Preston gave a sharp breath through his nose. "You think that sounds noble?" "No, sir," Caleb said. "I think it sounds like something I would not be ashamed for my daughter to hear." That name daughter changed the air around Madeline. It softened the scene without weakening it. She suddenly saw the man before her not as a worker interrupting a scandal, but as a father watching the clock measuring every minute against a promise made upstairs. Before Preston could answer, the hotel general manager hurried across the floor, pale and sweating beneath his black tuxedo. "Mr. Blake, Miss Harper, I am terribly sorry." He turned quickly toward Caleb, lowering his voice into a warning. "Caleb, return to your post." Preston smiled again, seeing the chain of command arrive like a rescue boat. But Madeline did not move. She lifted her chin, not loudly, not dramatically, only with the quiet authority of a woman who had spent her life learning which rooms obeyed money and which rooms obeyed truth. "No," she said, "he stays." The manager froze. Preston's smile vanished. Caleb looked at Madeline, surprised for the first time, and she realized with a strange ache behind her ribs that this poor single dad had defended her without knowing she owned the building beneath his feet. For a moment, no one seemed to know where to place their eyes. Preston looked at Madeline as if she had broken an old agreement that only he remembered. The general manager stood with one hand half raised, trapped between the man who donated money to the hotel and the woman whose company owned the marble under his shoes. Caleb remained still, but his gaze flicked once toward the mezzanine staircase where the banners for the Children's Science Showcase hung in soft gold letters. 12 minutes had become 10. Madeline noticed. That was the problem with men who wanted something from her. They always watched her face, her jewelry, her signature, her public value. Caleb watched the time because a child was waiting. Mr. Donovan, Madeline said, testing the name she had just read from his patchwalk with me. Preston laughed sharply. Madeline, you cannot be serious. She did not look back. I am. Caleb hesitated only long enough to make it clear he was not following power blindly. Ma'am, my daughter is upstairs. Then we will walk that direction. The answer surprised him. It surprised her, too. They moved away from the ballroom beneath the low murmur of expensive people pretending not to gossip. Outside the ballroom doors, the noise softened into the wide carpeted hallway where brass wall lamps threw warm light over framed photographs of the Grand Ellison in its glory days. Caleb carried his toolbox in one hand. Madeline walked beside him, rubbing the faint mark Preston had left on her wrist, not because it hurt, but because it reminded her how many polite cages had been built around her in the language of concern. Near the elevators, she stopped. You should not have had to do that, she said. Caleb gave a small shrug. Maybe not, but somebody should have. You knew who he was. No, you knew who I was. No. That answer landed harder than any compliment she had heard in years. Madeline opened her small evening clutch, removed a checkbook, and clicked a pen with the efficiency of a woman who had solved uncomfortable moments this way before. Then let me thank you properly. Caleb looked at the checkbook, then at her. Not insulted, not tempted, just tired in a way that had nothing to do with money. Please do not do that. Madeline paused. You do not even know the amount. That is not the issue. Most people would disagree. Most people are allowed to. The elevator chimed softly, but neither of them stepped inside. Madeline studied his face. There were lines near his eyes, not from bitterness, but from weather. Late nights, unpaid bills, and promises kept when nobody clapped. Are you always this difficult to reward? She asked. A faint smile touched his mouth and disappeared. Only when the reward feels like a receipt. The words embarrassed her because they were true. She had been trying to file his decency into a transaction to make it safer, cleaner, easier to understand. Then what do you want? Caleb looked past her toward the staircase where children's voices echoed faintly from the second floor. I want to see my daughter explain why her cardboard hotel can survive a power outage. Madeline blinked. That is her project emergency design. Backup lighting. Safe exits. She built it with cereal boxes, tape, and more confidence than engineering school ever gave me. There was pride in his voice, quiet but bright. It softened the hallway more than the lamps did. Her name, Madeline asked. Ellie. He checked his watch again. She gets nervous if she cannot see me in the front row. Madeline closed the checkbook slowly. For the first time that night, she did not feel chased. She did not feel cornered, measured, or priced. She felt witnessed by someone who had no interest in owning the moment. Then let us not keep Ellie waiting, she said. Caleb nodded, but before he turned, he glanced back toward the ballroom doors. Preston Blake stood there watching them through the narrow opening, his face stripped of charm. Caleb did not see the promise in that stare. Madeline did, and somewhere beneath the warm lights of the Grand Ellison, the night quietly changed direction. The staircase to the second floor curved above the lobby like a quiet bridge between two worlds. Below, the gala continued with nervous laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Above, children's voices spilled from the science showcase, bright and uneven, full of paper volcanoes, solar system mobiles, and trifold boards covered in marker. Caleb's pace changed the moment he heard them. He did not walk like an employee anymore. He walked like a father trying not to break a promise. Madeline followed beside him unnoticed, for once her diamonds hidden beneath the softer light of the hallway lamps. At the top of the stairs, a small girl in a yellow cardigan stood beside a cardboard model of the Grand Ellison. Its tiny windows cut from cereal boxes, its emergency exits marked with red arrows, its roof patched with silver tape. Ellie Donovan searched the room with brave eyes that were beginning to lose their courage. Then she saw Caleb. Her whole face opened. Daddy, you made it. Caleb set his toolbox down and crouched, not caring who watched. I told you I would. You are late. I know, but not gone. His smile softened. Never gone. Madeline looked away before the ache in her chest could become visible. She had spent years in rooms filled with men who promised forever with champagne in their hands and escape routes in their contracts. Caleb promised presents with grease under his fingernails and a tired smile, and somehow it felt holier. Ellie noticed Madeline and straightened with sudden politeness. "Hello, are you here for the showcase?" Madeline opened her mouth, then found herself answering not as a chief executive officer, but as a woman. "I think I am." Ellie brightened. "My hotel can stay safe during a blackout. See if the main lights go out. The backup strips glow along the floor so people do not panic." Caleb gently adjusted one of the tiny paper stairwells that had tilted. She designed the evacuation routes herself. Ellie whispered Daddy helped with the wires, but I had the idea. "The idea is the important part," Caleb said. Downstairs behind the polished doors and velvet ropes, Preston Blake was making plans with the calm cruelty of a man who knew how to turn humiliation into paperwork. He pulled the general manager aside near a service corridor and lowered his voice. "Your maintenance man accessed the stage panel during a private event." The manager swallowed. He was assigned there, then assigned the blame correctly. Preston's smile returned colder now. "The security system went dark for 2 minutes tonight. The donors saw disruption. Ms. Harper was placed in an uncomfortable position. I am sure your insurance carrier would be interested in whether an employee exceeded authorization." The manager's face lost color. "Mr. Donovan would never intentionally damage hotel systems. Intention is sentimental," Preston said. "Liability is useful." Within minutes, 2 security supervisors were told to pull Caleb's access logs. A technician loyal to Preston slipped through a lower maintenance door and unplugged a relay from the security cabinet, leaving just enough evidence to look careless, not criminal. A report began forming before Caleb even knew there was an accusation. Upstairs, Ellie tapped a small switch, and the cardboard hotel lit along its tiny hallways with a soft amber glow. A few parents clapped. Caleb clapped the loudest. Madeline did too, quietly touched by the simple grace of a child building safety out of scraps. Then Caleb's radio cracked at his belt. "Donovan, report to security office immediately." Ellie's smile faded. Caleb picked up the radio. "Can it wait 10 minutes?" A pause. Then the manager's strained voice answered, "No. Now." Madeline felt the warmth leave the hallway. Caleb looked at Ellie, then at the glowing model, then at the stairwell leading back down into the world of money and men like Preston Blake. He kissed his daughter's hair and whispered, "Stay with your project. I will be right back." But Madeline saw Preston waiting below with folded arms and a satisfied smile. She understood before Caleb did. The arrogant man had not walked away defeated. He'd only gone looking for a darker room to set the trap. Caleb walked down the staircase with the calm of a man who had been blamed before and learned that panic only made innocent people look guilty. Madeline followed 3 steps behind him, her eyes fixed on Preston Blake, who stood near the security office with his hands folded in front of him like a man waiting for a show to begin. The lobby had changed. The warm gold of the gala no longer felt elegant. It felt watchful. Hotel staff whispered near the front desk. 2 security supervisors stood outside the frosted glass door, avoiding Caleb's eyes. Preston looked at him and smiled. "Mr. Donovan," he said, smooth as polished stone. "What an unfortunate evening for heroism." Caleb did not answer. The general manager opened the security office door. "Caleb, there are concerns about unauthorized access to the stage panel and the lower security relay. I was assigned to the stage panel. The relay cabinet was opened with your access code." Caleb's brow tightened just slightly. "That is not possible." Preston gave a soft sigh. "Of course it is not." Madeline turned sharply. "Preston." He lifted both hands. "I am only standing here because your event, your guests, and your reputation were placed at risk." Caleb looked from the manager to the monitor wall where frozen camera feeds glowed in pale blue squares. He saw the missing timestamps before anyone mentioned them. 2 minutes gone. 2 quiet minutes erased like breath from a cold window. "Show me the access log," he said. The security supervisor hesitated. Preston laughed under his breath. "You are in no position to give instructions." Caleb's voice stayed low. "Then let me ask." Before anyone could respond, a small voice came from behind them. "My dad fixes things. He does not break them." Everyone turned. Ellie stood at the bottom of the staircase, clutching the edge of her yellow cardigan with one hand and holding a small strip of copper wire from her science project in the other. Her face was pale, but her chin was lifted in the brave, trembling way of a child trying to stand inside an adult storm. Caleb's expression changed at once. "Ellie, sweetheart, you should be upstairs. They said you did something bad." Her voice cracked on the last word. Caleb stepped toward her, but a security guard shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to let him pass. That tiny hesitation wounded Madeline more than Preston's grip ever had. Ellie saw it too. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. "He taught me backup lights," she said, turning toward Madeline as if somehow she understood where power lived in that hallway. "He said buildings are like people. When the main lights fail, the safe path still has to glow." The words landed softly, but they went deep. Madeline looked at Caleb, then at the monitors, then at Preston, whose smile had tightened at the edges. "Who told you to come down?" Caleb asked gently. Ellie held up a folded hotel map from her project board. "Nobody. I saw the emergency stairs on my model, and then I remembered the real hallway you showed me, the one near the old laundry room. The cameras there point the wrong way." The room went still. Caleb's eyes sharpened, not with fear, but recognition. "What did you say?" Ellie swallowed. "The blind spot. You told me every building has one, but good engineers do not hide it. They mark it so people can be safe." Madeline turned to the security supervisor. "Pull the camera from the old laundry hall. Miss Harper. That camera has been inactive for months," the manager said quickly. Caleb shook his head. "No. It was replaced last week with a temporary unit for the renovation crew." Preston's jaw moved once, almost invisibly. Madeline saw it. For the first time all night, she felt the difference between arrogance and fear. She stepped closer to the monitor wall. "Then pull it." The supervisor typed with stiff fingers. The screen flickered. A grainy hallway appeared dim and narrow with pipes along one wall and a service cabinet at the end. The timestamp rolled back. 1 minute. 2. 3. Then a man in a dark suit entered the frame using a keycard that was not Caleb's, carrying something small in his hand. His face was turned away, but his cufflinks caught the light in a sharp silver flash. Madeline knew those cufflinks. She had seen them on Preston at dinner. Ellie whispered, "That is not Daddy." No one answered her. No one needed to. The truth had not arrived loudly. It had come through a child's cardboard hotel, a forgotten camera, and the quiet faith of a daughter who refused to let the world rename her father. Preston Blake recovered faster than a guilty man should have. He stepped toward the monitor wall, his expression wounded, now almost offended, as if the footage had betrayed him personally. "That proves nothing," he said. "Plenty of men own dark suits. Plenty of men wear silver cufflinks." Caleb looked at the screen, then at Preston's wrists. Not plenty of men leave one hand in their pocket when they use a keycard. The room followed Caleb's gaze. Preston's right hand was still hidden inside his jacket pocket, closed around something no one could see. Madeline felt the small hairs rise along the back of her neck. She had been in hostile boardrooms, predatory negotiations, and dinners where a smile cost more than a lawsuit, but this felt different. This was not ambition dressed in a tuxedo anymore. This was control slipping, and control, when cornered, often reached for darker tools. The general manager cleared his throat, suddenly desperate to make the moment smaller. "Perhaps we should review all footage privately." "No," Madeline said. "We review it now." Preston turned to her with a softness that did not reach his eyes. "Madeline, you are tired. You are embarrassed. Do not let a maintenance man and a child turn this into a theater." Ellie stepped closer to Caleb's side. Caleb gently placed a hand behind her shoulder, not pushing her back, just reminding her she was not alone. "My daughter is done being part of this," he said. "She should go upstairs." Madeline nodded to a hotel attendant. "Please take Ellie back to the showcase and stay with her." Ellie looked up at Caleb, afraid to leave. "Daddy." Caleb crouched so their eyes were level. "You did the right thing. Now let me do mine." She swallowed, then nodded. As the attendant led her toward the stairs, the lights in the lobby flickered once, not fully out, just enough for every adult in the room to look up. Caleb heard the sound before the others understood it. A faint click from the relay cabinet on the monitor, then the soft, dead tone of a camera feed dropping. One screen went black, then another. Preston's face did not change, and that was what gave him away. Madeline's phone buzzed in her clutch. A message from an unknown number appeared lower garage. Now come along unless you want the story public by morning. She stared at it for half a second too long. Caleb saw her expression shift. Do not go down there, he said quietly. Madeline looked at him. You saw the message, I saw your face. Preston lifted his chin. This is absurd. But Madeline had already started walking not toward the elevator but toward the service corridor beside the security office. Caleb followed. Ms. Harper, I am not hiding in my own building. That is not hiding, Caleb said. That is choosing the door that keeps you safe. The corridor behind them was narrow and smelled faintly of warm dust floor polish and old wiring. The overhead lights hummed in uneven rhythm. Madeline moved quickly, anger carrying her faster than fear, until Caleb caught sight of the small dome camera above the laundry turn and stopped. Its indicator light was off. Wait, what is it? He pointed to the ceiling. That camera was working 3 minutes ago. A door clicked somewhere ahead. Footsteps sounded slow and deliberate just beyond the bend leading to the lower garage elevator. Madeline's breath caught. Caleb did not touch her except to open the old fire stair door at his left. This way. That stairwell is closed for renovation. Not closed, he said, forgotten. They slipped inside as 2 men in dark event jackets passed the corridor beyond them, speaking low into their phones. Nothing happened loudly. No shouting, no chaos. Only the terrible quiet of a trap missing its mark by inches. Caleb guided Madeline down one flight, then across a maintenance landing lit by a single amber bulb. For the first time all night, Madeline Harper, who owned towers and commanded thousands, let someone else lead because he was not trying to possess her life. He was trying to protect it. At the bottom, Caleb opened a side door into the employee lot where cold night air rushed in from Lake Michigan and the city lights trembled on wet pavement. Madeline leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. How did you know Caleb looked back toward the dark corridor? Because good buildings tell the truth when someone is trying to make them lie. She stared at him, seeing not a poor worker, not a convenient hero, but a man whose mind moved through danger with discipline and grace. Behind them, from deep inside the hotel, an alarm began to chirp softly, and Madeline understood that Preston had not simply tried to shame Caleb. He had been willing to turn the entire building into a weapon against the one man who had shown her respect. The alarm chirped again, small and steady, like a wounded bird hidden somewhere in the walls. Caleb listened with his head slightly turned, reading the rhythm of the building the way other men read faces. That is not a fire alarm, he said. Madeline pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as the cold moved through the employee lot. Then what is it, service fault? Someone is forcing the system to report problems in the wrong places. He looked up at the dark windows of the Grand Allison. It is meant to confuse security, not evacuate guests. Madeline watched him in the blue reflection of the wet pavement. The city behind him was all glass and distance, but he stood there like something older, steadier, carved from responsibility rather than ambition. You keep saying the building tells the truth, she said. Most maintenance men do not talk like that. A faint sadness crossed Caleb's face. Most maintenance men know more than people think. That is not an answer. He gave a small nod, accepting that. For a moment only the wind moved between them, carrying the smell of rain, lake air, and warm exhaust from the loading dock. Then Caleb looked toward a narrow metal door marked Employees Only. I used to design systems like this. Madeline blinked. Security systems integrated safety networks, access control, camera, routing, backup power, emergency path lighting, hotels, hospitals, schools, a few government buildings. His voice stayed plain without pride. 12 years ago, I had my name on contracts people fought to get into. Then why are you working nights with a tool belt? Caleb looked down at his hands. They were rough-lined, marked by work that did not make headlines. Because my wife got sick and the company I worked for did not understand school pickups. Hospital rooms missed deadlines, or a little girl who needed her father more than I needed a title. Madeline said nothing. The answer was too honest to interrupt. Caleb continued softer now. After Rebecca passed, Ellie stopped sleeping unless she knew I was in the apartment. Big jobs meant flights, late calls, 20-story buildings in other states. So I chose smaller work night shifts, local repairs enough to pay rent enough to be there in the morning. He looked at her then, and there was no shame in him. None. People call that falling behind. I call it keeping a promise." Madeline felt those words settle somewhere no compliment had ever reached. All her life, men had presented ambition as proof of worth. Caleb had given up applause for bedtime stories, boardrooms for school mornings, recognition for presence. It was not failure. It was sacrifice with no audience. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from her chief legal officer, emergency board call in conference room A. "Preston is claiming employee misconduct and executive instability. I is asking for temporary control authority." Madeline stared at the screen and the cold inside her sharpened. "He is moving for control of the company." Caleb's eyes hardened, not with anger, but clarity. "Then he needed tonight to make you look emotional and me look dangerous and the building look unsafe." "Yes." The side door opened behind them, and the general manager appeared breathless, afraid to step fully outside. "Ms. Harper, Mr. Blake is demanding your presence upstairs. The board members are assembling. He says either you address the security breach now or he will." Madeline closed her phone. For 1 second, she looked like the tired woman from the ballroom chased cornered, surrounded by men who mistook patience for weakness. Then she stood straighter. "Caleb, can you prove what he did?" Caleb glanced toward the hotel, then toward the second-floor windows where Ellie's science showcase glowed faintly above the lobby, with the access logs, the temporary camera feed, and the relay timing. "Yes." "Will you stand beside me?" He hesitated. Not because he was afraid of Preston, because a father always measures duty against a child waiting upstairs. Madeline understood before he spoke. "Ellie can come too," she said. "Her model found the blind spot before any of us did." Caleb looked at her, surprised again by respect offered without condescension. Then he picked up his toolbox. "All right," he said, "but we tell the truth calmly." Madeline almost smiled. "Is there another way?" Caleb opened the door for her. "There is," he said. "That is how men like Preston do it." Together they stepped back into the Grand Ellison, not as a chief executive officer and a poor single dad, but as two people carrying the same quiet weapon truth. Conference room A sat behind a wall of smoked glass above the ballroom, high enough to overlook the chandeliers and far enough to pretend it was untouched by the mess below. By the time Madeline entered, the board members were already seated around the long walnut table. Some men, tuxedos, some with loose-in ties, all wearing the careful concern of people calculating risk. Preston stood at the far end beside the presentation screen, calm again, polished again, almost handsome in the way expensive lies can look clean under good lighting. He paused when he saw Caleb enter behind her with his toolbox in one hand, and Ellie beside him holding the cardboard model against her chest. Preston gave a short laugh. "Madeline, surely this is not your response to a corporate emergency." Madeline did not sit. "It is." Preston looked around the room, inviting disbelief. "You brought the maintenance man and his child." Ellie's hands tightened around the model, but Caleb leaned down and whispered, "Stand tall, sweetheart." She did. That small movement did something to the room. It reminded the adults that innocence does not need a title to belong near the truth. Preston clicked the remote and Caleb's employee photograph appeared on the screen beside a list of access alerts. At 7:52 this evening, Mr. Donovan accessed restricted equipment. At 7:54, security feeds failed. At 8:06, Ms. Harper disappeared from monitored areas during a donor event. These facts suggest employee misconduct and impaired executive judgment. A board member frowned. Impaired. Preston lowered his voice, pretending sadness. Madeline has been under pressure. Tonight she allowed a staff member to interfere with a guest, followed him into service corridors, and now brings him into a board meeting. I am asking for temporary control authority only to protect the company. Madeline felt the old trap close around her. The same language again. Protect, stabilize, control. Caleb stepped forward before anger could do her speaking for her. "May I use the screen?" Preston smiled. "Absolutely not." Madeline turned to the board. "He may." Silence passed through the room like a key turning in a lock. Caleb connected a small tablet from his toolbox and opened 3 windows. Access logs, camera timestamps, and a wiring diagram of the Grand Ellison. "This is my code," he said, pointing to the first entry. "But this door reader was offline when the log was created. A dead reader cannot authenticate a living person." A gray-haired board member leaned forward. Caleb tapped the second window. This temporary camera near the old laundry hall recorded the actual access. The person used a physical override card, not my badge. The grainy footage appeared. A man in a dark suit, a silver flash at his wrist, a familiar posture. Preston's smile thinned. Speculation. Caleb nodded once. That is why my daughter's model matters. Ellie placed the cardboard hotel on the table, her voice small but clear. The blind spot is here, but the emergency strip sees the reflection from this hallway. Caleb gently turned the model so the board could see the tiny amber lines. Ellie recreated the building accurately enough to show what the main system missed. When the relay was pulled, the backup path light stayed on for 12 seconds, long enough to reflect the person's face in the brass panel outside the laundry door. He clicked once more. The image sharpened. Preston Blake's face appeared in the reflection, pale and unmistakable. No one spoke. Not the board, not the manager near the door, not Preston. The room that had measured Caleb by his uniform now measured Preston by his silence. Madeline looked down the table, her voice steady, almost gentle. Mr. Blake attempted to frame an employee, manipulate a safety incident, and use the confusion to seize control of my company. Preston opened his mouth, but no sentence came out. Caleb closed the tablet without triumph. Ellie reached for her father's hand, and in that quiet conference room above the glittering gala power, finally changed hands. Not from one rich person to another, but from arrogance back to truth. Preston Blake did not leave the room with shouting because men like Preston rarely know what to do when shouting no longer works. He stood at the end of the walnut table with his perfect cufflinks, his perfect tuxedo, and a face that had gone empty under the weight of proof. The board chair removed his glasses slowly. Mr. Blake, he said, until a formal investigation is complete, you will have no authority, no access, and no role in any Harper Meridian matter. Preston looked at Madeline as if she might still rescue him from the consequences he had built with his own hands. She did not. Security will escort you out, she said, not coldly, not cruelly, but with the calm of a woman returning to herself. And Preston, do not mistake my silence for weakness again. No one moved for a breath. Then the door opened and Preston walked out past Caleb, past Ellie, past the people who had once feared his money more than they respected the truth. When the door closed behind him, the room remained silent. Not the awkward silence from the ballroom, not the frightened silence of a scandal. This was different. This was the silence that comes when a room full of powerful people realizes that a poor single dad, a little girl with a cardboard hotel, and one honest act had protected what money could not. Madeline turned to Caleb. For the first time all night her voice trembled. "Mr. Donovan, I owe you an apology." Caleb shook his head gently. "You do not owe me anything." "Yes," she said, "I do. I doubted you because I have spent too long expecting people to disappoint me." Ellie looked up at her father, then at Madeline. "Daddy says people can forget how to trust when they have been hurt." Caleb closed his eyes for half a second, caught between embarrassment and pride. Madeline smiled softly. "Your daddy seems to say a lot of wise things." Ellie nodded. "Mostly in the car." A small laugh moved through the room, and with it the night finally began to breathe again. Later, after statements were made, locks were changed, and the gala ended quieter than it began. Madeline walked with Caleb and Ellie back to the second-floor showcase. Most of the tables had been packed away, but Ellie's cardboard hotel still glowed faintly under the amber emergency strips. A blue ribbon had been taped beside it by her teacher, who had written in marker-best real-world design. Caleb knelt beside his daughter, and this time, when his eyes filled, he did not hide it fast enough. Ellie hugged him hard. "We fixed it, Daddy." He kissed the top of her head. "You fixed the part one could not see." Madeline stood a few feet away, no longer feeling like the richest woman in the building, only the loneliest one learning how warmth looked from the outside. Ellie turned and held out the ribbon. "Miss Harper, do you want to see how the backup lights work?" Madeline stepped closer. "I would love to." Weeks later, Caleb was offered a position leading safety design for Harper Meridian, but he accepted only after Madeline promised flexible hours for school pickups, science fairs, and pancake mornings. Respect came first. Work came second. And somewhere between coffee in the hotel lobby, Ellie's endless questions and quiet walks beneath Chicago rain, Madeline stopped feeling chased and started feeling seen. not owned, not rescued scene. Because love, the kind that heals instead of takes, does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it wears scuffed boots, carries a toolbox, keeps its promises, and teaches a powerful woman that dignity is not loud, but it can silence a whole room.